Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of Boston Borough Council's Corporate and Community Overview and Scrutiny Committee, our first meeting of this council. I'm Paul Gleeson, I'm chair of the committee, and with me is Councillor Wellbeing, who is my vice chair. Firstly, our housekeeping rules are as follows. Restroom facilities are available for the ladies on this floor and for the gentlemen halfway down the main staircase. In the event of a fire alarm, officers will escort everyone to the fire point in the car park. This meeting is being streamed live, and as such, please may I ask all persons addressing the meeting to do so through their microphones. Please be advised that abuse or intimidation of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who is deemed to breach this requirement will be warned and asked to refrain, and if the behaviour persists, they will be asked to leave the meeting. I'm now moving to part 1 of the agenda. To receive apologies for absence and notice of substitutions, if any.
No apologies, Chairman.
Thank you. To sign the minutes of the previous meeting. As we do not have a quorum of members in attendance from the last meeting, to agree the minutes, I will sign them only as seen. To receive any declarations of interest in respect of any item on the agenda. Does any member have any declarations? Receive any written questions from members of the public?
No questions, Chairman.
That concludes the preliminary items, and now we'll move to part 2 of the agenda. The first item on the agenda is the joint scrutiny work between partner councils and is in page 5 of the agenda. The report is being presented by Mr. James Gilbert, who is joining us virtually, and Councillor Andorian as leader of the council, who will start.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm pleased to present this report tonight to your scrutiny panel. Obviously, we are a sovereign council and we have our own scrutiny panels here, or scrutiny committees, that scrutinise discrete reports on behalf of our sovereign council. But as part of the South and East Lincolnshire Partnership, we also have set up a joint scrutiny arrangement, and those panels have agreed task and finish groups with various headings. And so the purpose of tonight's report really is to talk to you about those task and finish groups and for you to nominate the 3 councillors you would like to sit on those committees. So if I take you through the report very briefly, I'm sure you've all read it and made your own notes on that. If we look first at, so the topics have been set out in appendices B and C, and this report asks for your permission, really, to let those task and finish groups scope the finer detail of what they're going to do. However, the subject headings are there for you to look at, and I'll go through them with you in a moment. And then the second recommendation on page 5 is that you agree to appoint 3 members to those scrutiny groups. So if we look at item 1.3 on page 6, you'll see there that the topics have already been identified following on from the work that's been undertaken in the previous year. The topics are health and wellbeing, housing and envirocrime, and public transport, which has already started, and that will continue and report back at some point. So really what you're looking at tonight is to appoint for the health and wellbeing scrutiny And I will ask James a moment to comment whether it's you that's going to appoint to the Housing and Envirocrime or whether it's the other scrutiny panel, because as I said before, we've got our own scrutiny panels here. I just want to talk a little bit about why we've chosen health and wellbeing and why it's important to us and to our residents. And I've drawn out some of the poorer indicators for Boston in terms of health and wellbeing. And so our life expectancy of males and females is a very poor indicator. It's in the red when we look at the health data. All this data is available from Public Health England. Something that's close to what's happened to me recently, Mr. Chair, is mortality from all cardiovascular diseases for people aged under 75. We are in the red for that as well. Emergency hospital admissions for hip fractures in people aged 65 and over is in the red. The percentage of physically active adults is very poor, as is the percentage of adults who are obese or overweight. The percentage of women who smoke during pregnancy is a very poor indicator. And lastly, the only last one I'll talk about is the percentage of Year 6 children who are obese. So even with those that I've just pointed out that are poor indicators, there's a lot that a task and finish would find, I think, Mr. Chair, very meaty and very worthwhile to get into. And for those of you that don't know, a task and finish is a very discrete project. It's time limited, it's subject specific, and the task and finish group would be able to call witnesses to give evidence. They would be able to exploit and explore the reasons behind this data. And then they would be able to look forward to perhaps finding some kind of resolutions for our local residents that would improve the data going forward. There will be an officer appointed to assist the panel in order to clerk, to do agendas, and eventually to write the reports. So in terms of your commitment as a committee, is really to give your expertise as local residents, as local councillors, and know that the donkey work, if you like, will be undertaken by the nominated member of staff, that you yourselves won't have to go away and write reports and extrapolate data from any tables or anything like that. That will be done for you. It will be your ideas that the committee's after, your knowledge, your wisdom and your experience of living in the area. So I would commend these recommendations to you, Mr. Chair. I'm sure that there'll be willing volunteers that are going to come forward because they have a particular interest in health and wellbeing or envirocrime and housing and so on. And I'm happy to take any questions. Happy to hand over to James Gilbert if you would like to ask him to speak, Mr. Chair. But that's all I have to say at the moment.
Has anybody got a question for Councillor Doreen at the moment? If not, I'll ask. Oh, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I have sorry, I'm representing the council in the Health and Scrutiny Committee, and I have just had a training session today. And if you could just let me know what would be our position in terms of, where would we actually the representative, for example, the health and wellbeing representative, where would that person be positioned in the scrutiny committee or the kind of council? Where would we go in terms of representing the people of Boston? Thank you.
So I think if you were interested in being one of the members of the committee, I don't think it would be in conflict with your role with the Health Scrutiny Committee at Lincolnshire. I think, in fact, if anything, it would be quite a complementary role. And are you asking where you go in the physical space, where the meetings would take place, or whether it did I pick up the conflict thing?
No, because like I said, you know, if would it be beneficial for another person so that, you know, we would get 2 votes rather than 1 vote, or is it so because, you know, we don't actually have enough representation, I felt, because, you know, I was the only person talking about Boston. So I thought there was a bit of an imbalance there. So what would be our best chance, if you know what I mean? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. I think Councillor Arayambath raises an interesting point. What I'm really hoping at the start of this new administration is that scrutiny is now done properly under your good guidance, Mr. Chair, and that scrutiny is done in a way that you become a critical friend to the administration, that it's not done in terms of opposition to the administration, the way perhaps it's been done previously, that you're able to look very critically at policies and projects that we bring before you and guide us and steer us in a way that gets the best outcomes for local residents. So I would say that it's not an us and them situation. We're not looking for people to strengthen numbers so that a certain vote gets through. And I would say with your background in health, Councillor, you would be ideal to be, with your background knowledge, to be one of the representatives on this committee. Thank you, Chair.
If I can just say, yeah, I mean, I was on health scrutiny for Lincolnshire for 6 years. Isn't there going to be no conflict? I mean, your skill set is great for both. So if you want to be on the task and finish group of that, your knowledge will be a great asset to them. Councillor Pierpoint.
Just for information, so this committee of 3 people, will they decide their own sort of work plan and programme and timings, or do we have to do this task and finish project within a certain period of time? Is it a year or 2 years or whatever? And you know, have they got a free hand to get on with it and make things happen and, you know, get all the things sorted out, or we've got any guidelines to work in? That's what I'd like to know, really. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. A really good question. I apologise for not explaining myself properly. This committee has been asked to nominate 3 people to go on each of the tasks and finishes. So will South Holland and East Lindsey. So you'll be a committee of 9. The task and finish group will be time limited, but you will set that time scale yourselves, because you'll want to have a start, a middle and an end. You'll want to know your end goal. If I could draw your attention to Appendix, let's have a look. Appendix B, which is on page 13 of the report. You'll see that there's been a scoping document done, which is a kind of starter for 10, Mr. Chairman. So the lines of inquiry there have already been scoped out, but when that group of 9 comes together, of course they will have their own ideas of where they want to go, or of what they want to focus on and concentrate on, and using the background and expertise of health practitioners who I'm sure we're very lucky to have someone like Councillor Arayambath on the committee. They may have those insights that you otherwise might have not had the opportunity to exploit. So those 3 lines of inquiry are there, and then that can be developed. So does that cover what you're asking? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Any other questions for Councillor Orrin? If not, I will ask Mr. Gilbert to make his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's very little for me to add after everything Councillor Durian has said. Essentially, we're looking for 3 members for both the health and wellbeing and the housing strategy piece of work. The other piece of work identified in Appendix A would be a matter for the Environment and Performance Scrutiny Committee at Boston. So it's purely those 2 committees, and we'd love 3 representatives so we can start the work.
Thank you. Councillor Pierpoint.
Are you looking for sort of any 3 people to sit on, or can it be a combination of 3 different people, or do you want the same 3 people doing both? How do you want it?
I
No, it
would
can be.
personally
Sorry.
sorry, I would prefer 6. But obviously, if people have great interest in both, what you want is a willing volunteer above anything else. But if the more that can join in, the better. Yep.
Obviously, then we've got a group of 3 from this council and a group of 3 from the other 2 councils. So the 9 of us are going to work together on a committee looking across the sub-region, and then obviously they'll have their information from South Holland, they'll have theirs from East Lindsey, we'll have ours, and we're going to be looking and comparing and seeing what's good, bad, and different, and then working from there. Is that how it works? Okay.
And obviously, we'll get a slightly more holistic view of the area. I mean, my one concern, which I'll raise now while I'm looking at the templates, and I know they're only scoping templates, I'm slightly concerned about the witnesses, in which it does seem a very top-down look. I mean, they're only they're not actually, on the housing one, there's no tenants, homeless people, housing charities. And I do think that whoever goes on the committee do need to ensure that we're not carrying on our tradition of a very top-down approach to the world. So I mean, I think it is important that we do include both sides of any argument. Does anybody else want to talk first on the sort of generality, and then we'll look to people volunteering? Councillor Austin.
I'd like to make 2 points. First of all, I notice in the summary it talks about the fact that it's previously been considered by previous scrutiny committees. So has this first topic been scrutinised already as background?
Mr. Gould?
So in terms of public transport, the scrutiny did commence pre-election. It probably started the middle of last year. It was a very in-depth scrutiny that didn't conclude at the end of the last term. So my understanding is EMP will receive a report at their next meeting requesting they make the allocations to that committee to pick up that piece of work thereafter. So there are some members who continue to be on scrutiny of the councils who have been involved in that piece of work already. So we're seeking to kind of conclude that piece of work now around public transport and bring it to a conclusion so reports and recommendations can come back.
A more strategic point I would like to make. I'm very much in favour of this development because on a strategic matter, one of my concerns for Boston going forward is that there is this proposal hanging over our head for a large unitary authority for the whole of Lincolnshire, Greater Lincolnshire, which means a unitary stretching from the Humber virtually down to Peterborough. Now, I personally regard this as a far too big an area for one authority because of the geography as much as anything else. So I'm very happy that we're developing the partnership between the 3 councils, and if it can be shown to be working well with developments of this type, I think that will be the best antidote to this strategic threat. Just a point to bear in mind.
Thank you. Anybody else like to comment on the substance of the article before we start asking for volunteers for these committees? So as I understand it, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Staples.
That's all right, Mr. Chairman. You looking into your work. I just really am concerned about the public transport throughout the county, and the allocation of money so far I have discovered is something like £5 million. 3 million of that goes on to Call Connect, and leaves 2 million county-wide for a bus provision. Can I have confirmation from you, please, Mr. Gilbert?
I'm sorry, I don't know that detail because I've not been involved in that piece of scrutiny, but I'm happy to take it away and come back to you if that's helpful.
Yes, it would be. Yeah, please.
Thank you. I apologise for not knowing.
That's no problem. Thank you. Thank you.
So if I have this right, the ones we are looking to is the housing strategy and the health and well-being. Yeah. The other two are, one is a continuing one, which will be EMP finding, and the other one, a new one with EMP. So are there any councillors who would like to volunteer to represent us on the housing strategy task and finish group? Total rush. Okay, I'll start the ball rolling by saying I will do it. Thank you, Councillor Marson. Thank you, Councillor Mountain. So that is subject to anybody else wanting to do it, and I will then drop out. The three.
Sorry, Chairman, what was that? I missed the
That
name.
was the housing task and finish group. I'm happy to be on it, but I'll be equally happy if another councillor wanted to do it. No, in which case it's Councillor Mountain, Marson and myself. Thank you. And we're now looking for volunteers to be on the health and well-being task and finish group. Councillor Ioma, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Welbury and Councillor Drayton. That was easy. Yes, thank you very much. Obviously, as you go into this, if you need any advice or anything, my phone number's there. Always feel free to ring me. Obviously, officers will help you. Councillor Dorian will help you there. But obviously, you know, if you feel you need just a little bit of advice about how things are going, you can phone me at any time. But thank you much. That was actually easier than I thought it would be. Thank you, Councillor Dorian. Which then moves us on to the next and luckily last item, which is our work programme. Obviously, this is early days, and so a lot of you as new members of the council are getting your, trying to establish many other things. So what I am proposing, along with anything people come up with tonight, is I am proposing that we will have a workshop of our members sometime in the next couple of months, where we can feel maybe slightly freer and talk about our concerns and work out how and if we put them onto our work programme. But has Mr. Fisher anything to say?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've got the work programme in front of you. Your next meeting already has an item adoption of a new procurement strategy. So that'll be a paper coming forward, setting out a proposal for a strategy that your views and good thoughts will be sought over. Anything you do wish to add this evening, we can consider, and if that can be prepped for July.